Hey everyone, it's Norm from Tested, and first of all, Happy New Year. Hope you all had a wonderful holiday, and for those of you who were able to take a break, had a wonderful break as well. And it's 2021, and I wanted to kick off this year with a show and tell, and in fact, going hands-on with an upcoming piece of hardware that I'm able to have a prototype with here today. So if you've watched tested videos in the past, back at Maker Faire and even in our studio, we've had conversations and checked out the products of a company called Looking Glass Factory. This is a team of folks who over the past decade have been experimenting with products and prototypes in holographic imagery, things that can display volumetric images that you can look around. It's really cool stuff, but a wide range of products. So whether it's like a matrix of LED lights that they started with to back in 2018, they put out a product called the Looking Glass, which was this kind of acrylic lucite rectangle, this display that you put in your desk, and inside it looked like a 3D image that you could look around. It's like a light field display. So not just a stereo image like what you wear with 3D glasses to watch a 3D movie. Here it looked like a 3D model or photos or video that lived inside this piece of thick acrylic glass. And for 2021, they're putting out yet another iteration of this. It's called the Looking Glass Portrait. They actually have been running a Kickstarter for it for the past month or so, and it's ending in about a week and a half. And they were able to send me an early prototype of the Looking Glass Portrait. So as in years past, as in products past that we've shown off, it's really tough to show a holographic image in a flat video, a 16:9 YouTube video, if we're not filming this in stereoscopic 3D. But I'll do my best to try to explain how this device works and what the experience is. And I think even in this flat video, you might be able to see how it's supposed to look. So this is one of the early prototypes, hand-built prototypes of the Looking Glass Portrait, and basically it's a computer that runs a display, and it's a Raspberry Pi 4 on the inside, basically running what's almost like a digital photo frame, but as opposed to just static photos that you take with your DSLR or your smartphone, these are volumetric images. Now, the last Looking Glass product, it was, like I said, a piece of acrylic, this piece of lucite that was in this volume, and the images all look like they lived inside this volume. And the same kind of effect is happening here, but the big difference is there is no acrylic. It's a hollow space. So there is a display in here, and I'm actually going to shift to a second camera so you can get a better sense of it. But if you look in this display, they have this animation playing, and as I shift the animation and rotate the screen here, you can actually see that you're getting different perspectives. So the way a light field display like this is supposed to work, so as opposed to like a stereoscopic video where you get two views essentially, a left eye view and a right eye view, which when they're matched with what your eyes see, you get the sensation of depth, right? You get the sensation that you're looking at a right perspective and a left perspective of an image as you would see an object in the real world. What this display does is it can display up to 100 different views. So if you think of one of those old lenticular books, like those children's books, you have basically a screen filter over a printed image, and so when you look at this printed image through that filter without 3D glasses, you can kind of see either a moving image or some type of also a 3D image, but that's one static image with only two views, usually repeated, interlaced. Here you have between 45 and 100 different views that the Raspberry Pi can process, and so you get a much more convincing perspective and view of whatever photo or object or 3D model that they display in here to get much more range of movement. The viewing area is about 58 degrees here. So once again, if we look at this image, this is actually a light field image, which essentially a combination of a bunch of different images combined together and displayed all at the same time. So it doesn't matter what angle you look at it, as long as you're within that 58-degree viewing cone. So this would be outside of that, and the image fades away. This would be outside of that, the image fades away. You get to actually look around the image, and you can see it pretty dramatically in the shadow and where the hand blocks the logo on the top right. It's only left and right, so you don't get, I mean, the effect still persists a little bit, but it's a little warp if you tilt it up and down. But basically, if I'm turning my head and moving around the looking glass portrait here, it would look like this was a person inside of this frame. So there are a couple things about the looking glass portrait that make it exciting for me as a fan of this technology and a follower of these prototypes they've been working on. One is the price point. For the Kickstarter campaign, this is priced at $250, which is far cheaper and more affordable than the previous products they've put out. It's still early adopter pricing, but it's something that feels attainable and actually useful because of now the ability for you and I to take photos with our phones with depth mapped depth information. So if you have like an iPhone 10, 11, or 12, or an iPhone 12 with the LiDAR sensor in the back, you can take photos, flat photos, and you can also embed it in those portrait images is a depth map that then you can run through software and have it display as a volumetric image on the looking glass portrait. And I was able to send some of my portrait mode photos over to the looking glass team, and they processed them and uploaded them to the prototype, and it looks pretty good. It's not as fully 3D as if you take, those 45 to 100 different views and do a real true light field image, but it's pretty compelling. It feels very much like that Minority Report display where you're grafting 2D images on a 3D model. You can't necessarily look behind it. There are going to be occlusion things you can't get around with the depth map, but their depth is there. Images, faces look like they're living inside this display. And I was able to also chat with the CEO of Looking Glass Factory, Shawn Frayne, over Zoom to learn about the development of this product and their hopes for what the backers are going to be able to do with it. So let's take a listen.
The first Looking Glass product line that we launched about a couple years ago was really a developer kit. So thousands of folks got those systems and really showed the way to what folks wanted to do with holographic display, what was possible right around the corner with a few technological advances for this new type of interface. And so about 18 months ago, we started working sort of quietly on a system that could go on everyone's desk in 3D land. So expanding beyond strictly Unity developers and Unreal developers, although this system also is great for them, but going into folks that are experimenting with 3D photography, folks who might have bought an iPhone 12 Pro because it's got a LiDAR camera and they were curious about what that can do. So going from, tens of thousands of folks to tens of millions of folks. And we put the pedal to the metal on development of this, about March or so when the pandemic started to hit, because we thought that this was something that folks would want to have not at their offices, but be able to play around with and explore on their desks at home.
Yeah, and it's called the portrait. It's still a kind of rectangular display. So are the fundamentals of how the optics work, how the whole system works, the same premise as the Looking Glass, except now shrunken down in terms of dimensions?
The fundamentals are the same in that, I don't know, how do I put it? A car has four wheels, so this is another car. In that sense, it still works by projecting out millions of rays of light. So it is a light field display, as opposed to some other types of three-dimensional technologies that would scatter light across against physical medium and other things that we've developed in the distant past. So in that sense, it's an extension or a second generation of the first Looking Glass that folks might know from your show. But there are a lot of big differences that we've rolled in that we dreamed about from the very beginning. So this is the first looking glass that actually lets you touch the holograms.
Hmm.
So they extend beyond the physical bounds of the device itself. So we actually didn't find a good way to communicate this over video, but there's no block in this generation of looking glass. So it's sort of a hollow interior, and the holograms that live within that and can extend in front of by a few inches and behind the physical structure of the device itself. And it's got a built-in computer, so it's got a Raspberry Pi 4 that actually can run a bunch of holographic media standalone, and a few other pretty significant advances on the software stack side of things.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the display side of it, because the first generation of Looking Glass, it was really easy to explain for people. It was a volume like described, the block of the display, and the images within were literally within that volume. So in the really compelling demos, you had animated goldfish, for example, swimming around it. Everything was contained, which made sense with the kind of the way you're doing the light field imaging. How does this go beyond that? And
so it sends out. So in a lot of ways, it's a similar fundamental technology to what the first generation Looking Glass was. In that system, we sent out a few dozen different views or perspectives of a three-dimensional scene. We do that by controlling the directionality of millions of small subpixels. And I can go into more details on exactly what we do there in case folks are curious. In this system, we've cranked that up. So between 45 to up to 100 different perspectives are shot out of the display in about a 58-degree view cone. And that full light field data set is updated every 60th of a second. So you can still have fully dynamic, living, holographic information that you see. The big difference here is that with the Looking Glass Portrait versus the prior generation of systems is we've made enough advances in some fancy stuff that we're doing on the software side of things, and also on the optics, so that we can actually remove the highly refractive, the high index of refraction block of material that contained the holographic information before. So it's almost as if we took that device and just took away the block, and now the holograms can exist in front of and behind the physical volume of the display. It's hard to explain, and hopefully we got enough across in some of the videos so folks can get a sense of this. We didn't want to do any post-processing or effects. So everything that folks see online is just shot with either my camera or camera of some other folks in the team.
Is it fair to say that the block was like a necessity of what the output could do in that first generation to kind of contain it and kind of limit the views, or kind of lock it into that volume? And now, because it sounds like the processing allows for a multiple number of the views, the restriction is gone, and you can be more bold with what you want to project out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all, stereoscopy plays a role. So this is a super stereoscopic system in that we're pumping out a lot of different perspectives of a scene. Those are three-dimensional in nature. But there's a lot of other depth cues that come into believing that something is real in front of you.
Yeah.
And a lot of three-dimensional display technologies of the past have only focused on track stereoscopy or things of that nature, whereas we try to focus on the full kit and caboodle of what makes the real world feel real. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, it's all of these advances combined that finally let us let the hologram break out of the physical volume.
Yeah, the first Looking Glass was, like you said, for developers. It allowed for real time playback and also like animations. Here, self-contained unit. So a lot of the expected experiences, as you guys talked about in your campaign, the ability to take a photo with like a lidar based depth sensing camera, like people have on their iPhones, and then import that in with software. Can you talk about that process? Because those are different things, right? A depth map is very different than the kind of light field slices that you guys generate.
Sure. So, I mean, the Looking Glass Portrait supports two modes of operation. So, one is desktop mode. So, folks who are familiar with our first generation systems, the Looking Glass Portrait can work with PC and Macs in the same way. Plug it in over an HDMI and USB-C cable, and you're ready to go using the computational power of that computer. Um, and this is great for Unity developers and what have you. But for standalone operation, all you need to do is plug in power directly. You don't need to plug into a separate computer because it has this Raspberry Pi inside that can run the computation fast enough and display holographic living and moving and also static information. The easiest way for folks to get started making their own holograms for the device is what you're bringing up, Norm, of a single portrait mode photo. So there's this sort of secret that's behind all portrait mode photos, and that's that they are recording a depth map. Usually that depth map is only used to blur out the background behind the main subject, sort of like what's happening behind you in your awesome camera that you have. I don't have that awesome camera. That depth information can also be used to generate the multiple number of views or perspectives necessary to generate a holographic image or holographic video. Millions of folks' phones have this capability and have already recorded many billions of depth maps behind these portrait mode photos that are extractable with this new software that we're releasing for free to folks to use that get a Looking Glass Portrait called Holoplay Studio. And that's an easy way for folks to generate their first holograms. For folks who want to take it another level, we do support rail capture or panning shots, which get a number of different perspectives, like actually different perspectives from the real world. And that can be piped in through our software into the Looking Glass Portrait as well. The advantage there is that you can then capture and display things like refraction or reflections or specular details that aren't captured with a single portrait mode photo and the depth map that contains.
So you're talking about stereo images, or actually way more than stereo, and as many as you want to input in. The old kind of matrix bullet time style,
Exactly.
camera on a rail, and then the software that you guys are working with can interpret that into the light field image.
Exactly. So there's these two different sets of ways to capture the real world and make holographic photos or videos from those captures. One is depth photos, which are best carried by a single portrait mode photo. But the other is what you're getting at, basically the equivalent of bullet time photos, which you can capture with a single photograph, with a single camera moving on a rail, as a lot of folks in the community know, or you can do it with a camera array. And in the case of the famous matrix bullet time capture, that is playing back in time, sort of this spatial capture. Whereas we take that playback in time and play it back in an instant in space. And so we're really doing this kind of transform between time and space recording, and then outputting that through a hologram. I know that's the nerdiest way to possibly put this, but a movie is a hologram. What is it? What's this? A hologram is a movie that's played back in space and time.
Right. And as the user manipulates their own viewpoint by moving their head, they are essentially scrubbing through the viewpoints. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's this like really powerful concept that applies to all sorts of things. Once you have that idea that you could have a panning shot that captures different points of view in space, and then you smush all of that into a single moment played back through a holographic display, you can apply that not only to, real world capture, but you can also imagine, what would it be like to move a virtual camera over Google Maps, for instance. Now there's holograms that are hiding everywhere that can be played back through the system.
It's not a feature that's supported by iPhones currently in terms of depth mapping, combining that with video. But is that something that's a possibility where you can, the software can take advantage of a depth map either generated by LiDAR or stereo, but have it at multiple frames a second, and then that processed to play back at some frame rate?
Yeah, absolutely. And it actually is supported by a small number of apps.
Hmm.
So we actually just unlocked this as a sort of free thing for folks in the community that are getting these new systems because we hit this stretch goal on our campaign and so on. So we've partnered with an app maker that made an app called Record 3D. And this works with iPhone 10, 11, and 12s, both with the true depth front facing camera and also the back facing cameras, some of which are LiDAR enabled. So you can record video, like report style videos. I actually was recording my two kiddos the other day decorating the tree. And it's crazy how, and then I put it in the looking glass portrait. It's crazy how similar that feeling is to the original Minority Report videos, where Tom Cruise is looking at his son sort of projected out from the wall as a
Totally.
hologram. So folks will now be able to do that without any programming whatsoever, just through this app and then through our software.
And those third-party apps, what they're outputting, is it essentially a depth map, but at multiple frames, like one per every frame?
Yep. Yep.
Ah. Now, they're also on the marketplace right now a bunch of stereo cameras, like VR 180
Mhm.
cameras that can do at up to 60 FPS stereo imaging. Is that something? Because you can get a sense of depth with that. It's not the same as a depth map, but are those compatible?
So we have direct support in Holoplay Studio, which is, again, is sort of this central hub of conversion of different types of 3D capture and 3D formats into a holographic format suitable for loading on folks' looking glasses. Uh, we have support in there rolling out in Q3 as a software update for stereo photos.
Hmm.
So folks will be able to drop in a stereo pair, and immediately that will be what's happening in the background is a depth map is generated, and then we extract out the number of different perspectives necessary to display glasses free in looking glass portrait. It also works with the other looking glasses too, that folks might already have. And what we don't directly support is 360 3D video, although we have run that in our first generation looking glasses with experimental apps, and folks in the community have made a bunch of these. So I expect in 2021, folks in the community are probably going to release some players for looking glass portrait for 360 3D video, but we're not officially supporting that at this time. But if folks are taking stereo shots, there should be no way that this is going to be the easiest way
Yeah.
for folks to view those that hopefully has ever been around.
Yeah, no need to put on any type of headset or anything, or wear some type of stereo glasses
Right.
for changing the image. Is that a compute heavy process for Holoplay Studio to output the field image based on a photo and depth map or video and depth map? And I guess what I'm getting at is how soon before this can be done in relative real time, so people can have video conversations but with depth data and then output it on the portrait.
So folks are already experimenting with that, like holographic zoom or what have you, using depth cameras like Azure Connect or RealSense cameras, or even some of these newer iPhones with their current generation looking glasses. So it's pretty clear that there's going to be a lot of that with looking glass portrait. It'll be experimental at first, so it won't be something that we're releasing as a product. But folks who really want to get to the edge of the frontier will probably be able to experience that in 2021, thanks to the community. That does require being connected to a PC or Mac for doing that heavier duty
Yeah.
sort of streaming processing. It's not too far away before that could be completely standalone. But it's kind of tricky to speculate exactly when.
And to get it to the price point, it sounds like there's a confluence of available technologies, things like the Raspberry Pi, things like some manufacturing efficiencies, and things that get it to that. Is that what you guys are always looking at now with the fundamentals down, to kind of look down the line and see, okay, what's going to be available, what's going to perfectly match, so we can get a product that can deliver this type of experience going forward?
Oh yeah, I mean, we always have a bunch of stuff cooking in the background. the stuff that we can release publicly is probably, I don't know, like 18 months behind the stuff that's sort of cooking in the background or so. So with this launch, we wanted to prove that it was possible to have a much more affordable system. I mean, this is under a few $100s for folks to get access to, that could have this standalone functionality. So you didn't always have to be tethered to a PC or Mac to have holograms living on your desk, and to really lean into people and characters in real world capture being a significant part of the holographic experience, because a lot of what we had been doing in the prior 18 months was around synthetic content, which is great, but capture and display of the real world that's a big part of the dream of the hologram. That's what we see in all the movies. So this is a carrier of that dream in a lot of ways. So a lot more to come on top of this, but we've got our hands full right now delivering this to folks.
Totally. And in terms of the manufacturing pipeline, you guys are working with prototypes right now, but how will the final versions differ, or where are you guys in the production pipeline to ensure some delivery next year?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, this had been in development for about 18 months, and then we just dramatically accelerated the time frame earlier this year, earlier in 2020. So we've made, I don't know, counting the very early prototypes, coming up to probably 100 prototype units, and we're testing about 50 early beta units right now in the lab. And that's just to run it through its paces. We're getting those to a small handful of folks that we've known in the community for a long time that are testing some stuff for us and so on. And then we do a shipment in January for 50 folks from the Kickstarter who purchased advanced beta units, and they'll get early access to the software and so on as well that they can use to load on their own holographic info into their looking glass portraits. And then the main shipments, the main production shipments, go out in spring 2021. And we're on track for that. It's obviously a particularly challenging moment for making hardware, but we've done this enough times that we're confident in sort of the game plan that we're rolling forward with. And but folks can ask us questions. I mean, we try to be as transparent as possible. If folks have questions, we even show them into our lab and what have you. Folks can ping me directly, and I'll give a frank answer for wherever we're at.
Awesome. Yeah, really appreciate that. And thank you so much for the time here. It's really exciting to see the campaign take off and the kind of the features you guys are unlocking with those stretch goals. It makes that product ever more exciting. Shawn, it's great to see you. It's great to check in. Thank you so much for continuing to develop this product and making it accessible for folks like us who are really interested in it.
Thanks, Norm. Really appreciate it.
So I want to thank Shawn for getting on the line with me and chatting about their journey developing this product. But now let's take a look at the hardware. And one of the first things that struck me is just how nice the fit and finish of this pre-production unit is. If their shipping units are anything like the build quality of this prototype, I'm going to be really impressed. But looking at the hardware, like I said in the back, this is where the computing unit lives, the Raspberry Pi 4, and you can see there's some fins here for some passive cooling. You can also notice there are some slots here for you to hang it on a wall if you want to do so, but I've been having this displayed on a stand, and the stand actually is magnetically attached to the back here. You pop that off, and then very easily slots onto 2 screws on the bottom, like so, and displays at that ideal angle for you to view this while it's sitting on a table within that perfect sweet spot, that 58-degree cone of view. There's also a 1/4-inch mount on the bottom if you want to put this on some type of stand, or tripod stand or something like that. On this side, there's full HDMI port. There's USB-C for power as well as data for you to transfer your photos over or directly tap into that Raspberry Pi 4. And then also an auxiliary audio out speaker jack, essentially, for people who want to create videos, volumetric videos that have some audio playback. On the other side, there's two buttons. There's basically a power button, and then underneath that, there's a button that adjusts the light around the frame. So if I press that, you can see there are 5 settings for brightness. And this light around the frame does a lot to help improve the illusion of the depth effect. You can actually also see around the edges here, Shawn talked about, it's mirrored. So while there is that screen and that display, it makes the image look larger and deeper than what the actual physical dimensions of this unit is because of those mirrored sides. And the display itself is very bright, and off-axis you can see also very reflective. And what this kind of rectangular light does is also, as you can see as I tilt this off to the side, it creates the illusion of this border around the entire volume of the image, or where that image inhabits, kind of replacing the need for that lucite acrylic that it had in the previous unit. So it's actually an empty cavity here. I can put my hand in there and touch the display if I want, and over time it does seem to pick up a little bit of dust, easy to blow off. Dust doesn't affect the quality of the image, and so from 3 feet to 4 feet away, it looks fully 3D and pretty sharp, but if you do get up close to it, like a foot away, you can see that the way they get the multiple views means that they do have to split the resolution of their display into those multiple views. So what you're actually seeing at one time is a relatively lower resolution. You can see the pixels, basically, of the display of the image. On the sides here, there are 3 buttons. So the top 2 buttons cycle through the library of images, and they're going to include a bunch of 3D models and animations for backers. And then this bottom button basically stops and starts animations, or cycles them, or freezes them. So for example, for this one, you can stop, pause it, play it, or if I hold it, it will have it not cycle or have it cycle again. One of the things I'm really hope for is a way for you to generate playlists and browse through. If you have, 1,000 different images, which you can store in the built-in storage, you're going to want to be able to get to the one you want rather than cycling through all 1,000 of them just using these 2 buttons on top. So the part of the experience I'm not able to test right now is the software side of things. What is that workflow for getting the portrait mode photos off of my phone and run through the software, process, turn into a light field photo, and then uploaded to the Looking Glass portrait? And they promise it'll be streamlined. The software will be bundled for the Kickstarter campaign backers. So if that is relatively easy, because there are so many photos, portrait mode photos on my phone, I want to get on this. And if it's really straightforward to capture even volumetric video with a third-party application, then that makes this incredibly compelling. Because even with the kind of bundled images and animations and the few photos that they ship with this prototype unit for me to check out, it's been something that's captured the attention of everyone I've put this in front of. In my home, I've had it in my living room, and my kid loves looking at it. And that 58-degree field of view, that sweet spot you have to be in to see the image, yes, that's technically a limitation, but in using it, it's very easy to overcome. It doesn't feel like the device is broken, and it's so intuitive to just move your head and shift your head and see the image. It gets very clear, very bright, works great in daylight, and it's something that has really captured the imagination of everyone I've put this in front of. But the more exciting potential is beyond that, beyond just taking 3D photos and videos and putting on this and doing something more interactive, having this plugged in over data or HDMI to a laptop, to a computer, so you can display things and render things in real time. And with the previous Looking Glass that they had, which is essentially the same technology, you could be running, essentially games on this as well and displaying 3D objects. And they're promising support for displaying OBJs and STLs. So imagine downloading something from Thingiverse, and as opposed to using a mouse to, do a turnaround for an image, you can actually have it displayed and look around it with your head on a volumetric display. And then even beyond that, something that I really want to see happen on this, and Shawn talked a little bit about, is mounting a camera with a depth sensor like an Intel RealSense camera or a Kinect Azure, and doing real-time volumetric video. So the equivalent of a Skype call, a Zoom call, a FaceTime call, but you're looking at a 3D representation of the person you're talking to if they have another looking glass and also a volumetric camera on their side of it. That's really going to feel like the future. So that's the Looking Glass Portrait. It is a product that's, it's a real thing. This prototype is really nicely built, and I can't wait to get my hands on a final production unit. But in the meantime, there's still a little bit of time left on their campaign. I'll include a link below in the description and the comments if you want to check that out. But thank you so much for watching, and Happy New Year. We got so much cool stuff planned. We can't wait to share with you. So we'll see you next time. Bye.